One of the things as a presenter is you have to think about how to control focus, because the audience is trying to figure out, should I look at the presenter, should I look at the slide, should I look at something else? And there's just a lot of things vying for their attention. And I think this is especially true when you're dealing with data, because when you pop up a slide that's full of data, the tendency is the audience stares at it and they want to figure it out, but then they have to think about, are they going to listen to you, or are they going to read and parse the data? So I think there's an extra burden when you're presenting data to, how do you manage that flow of information? Mm-hmm. What you've been seeing are some quotes from students who took the course last semester. It's basically advice that they have for you in answer to the following questions. What could you have done differently to improve your experience in this course? In terms of how I start, I typically will start with them looking at me, and I'll sort of give the context. I'll talk about what it is they're going to see, or where this data comes from, and I'll sort of preview that with them looking at me, and then I'll advance the slide. Notice that I've sort of turned and looked at the screen. The eyes are a big indicator for the audience where to look. So where I look, they kind of look. And at this point, I'm using my gesturing to draw your attention to the slide, right? Because where I point, you're going to look. And that's another way to control focus. So I like it when the audience looks at me, because when they look at me and I'm looking at them, I can sort of tell if they're paying attention, if they understand or whatnot. So my perspective on giving presentations is that it's very presenter-centric. The categories are going to be on the left. You see that 32 of them said that they should have practiced more. 14 said they should have started the assignments earlier and attended office hours, and 3 said to be less nervous. So these are things that you would expect in a public speaking class or presentation skills class. But some of the more interesting ones were 17 said they should have attended lecture, which for me was good news. A build slide is when I have a slide and I have pieces that appear at different times, but I control when they appear. It's just a way to parcel out the information into pieces that I can control. At this point, what I'm doing is I'm bringing more of the builds up. I could have just put them up and let the audience read them on their own, and sometimes I've done that, and sometimes but I have to sort of buy them time to do that. So there's enough time for them to read them and then listen to me at the same time. And here I decided that I would just take them through it, because it's short and there aren't that many to talk about anyway. And for some of them I added more points that I want them to know about the course, so I chose to do it that way. For me, the build slide and just directing the focus and all that is a way to minimize the load, the cognitive load on the part of the audience, so that they can spend more time sort of understanding things and not trying to figure it out. Because I'm going to take them through it, I'm going to explore it and explain it with them. You can see that for most people, problem solving is important, and MIT did a great job. If I'm presenting data from an experiment, certainly in that case, I would point out what are some things that we expected, because that's a way that the audience can sort of check their understanding of things. It's like, oh, given this situation, I expect this to happen. Oh yes, that's true. And then pointing out things that we didn't expect are much more interesting research questions, for example, right? Things for further inquiry. I like slides that are what I call glanceable. So when I bring up a slide, the audience glances at it, and then their attention comes back to me. And that's one reason why I also build the slide, because then I can make the pieces glanceable. As opposed to if I put it all up at once, and they sort of have to look at it and figure out what's going on. And especially with data, because with data, it's often, you have to study it and read it and actually figure out if what you think it says is what it really says. But another thing I like to do is sometimes I recreate the slide in front of me. Like if there's a slide with a bunch of information or quadrants, so it's, I might recreate it with my gestures in front of me when I talk about it. And so here we have this and here we have that, and so forth. As a presenter, one of the ways that you can control focus is movement. And if I were to move to this part of the room, if the audience is paying attention, they would also look at me, right? And so I could have used space to say, stay in one position for the first survey and then go to another position for a second survey. The message at the end of the day is fundamental. The slides are just extra things to help the message get across. The gesturing, same thing. My controlling the focus is, again, just trying to get rid of distractions from them so that essentially the core of the message gets through. And for data, I'm giving some of the context beforehand. I'm showing you what you're seeing in terms of these are the axes and this is what that means and here's what we expect, here's what we don't expect. Again, it's basically to streamline the process of understanding things so that they can get the takeaways more simpler and more efficiently.